Get ready to experience the pulse of the outdoor community as we dive into the stories of people's journeys into the outdoor world. Hello and welcome to the Outdoor Pulse. I'm your host, Mitch Dean, and today we have Kelsey Woods on. She is a nomad, skydiver, spiritual guru person. So we're in for a really awesome story today, and we're just going to kind of dive right into it and kind of start with her kind of introducing herself and everything. So welcome, Kelsey. How's it going?
Good, good.
Awesome.
Thank you
Awesome.
for having me. I
No
appreciate
problem.
it.
Happy to have you on.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm Kelsey. I'm 30 years old. I'm located currently in Maine in the United States. Born and raised here, but don't spend a lot of time here at all. Um,
Traveling a bunch.
yeah, I just feel like it's not really a choice. It's really about coming from the heart. Um,
Gotcha.
yeah. I'm a yoga instructor. I also do breath work and meditation. I've been a massage therapist for 11 years, and I've also been skydiving for going on a full 2 years now, I think two and a half.
It's awesome. So with the outdoor community and like traveling and all that, when did you initially kind of get into that? What was the initial kind of step in?
Honestly, I feel like a lot of it stemmed from depression. I had lost a really good friend of mine. I lost my dog, and they were both very young. And I started to realize like life is not promised to be long. And it just kind of kicked me in the butt. And I went skydiving like 2 months later and sort of found my niche. I found my people, I found my tribe. These people are wild, free, um, many other things as well, but mostly fun. They're really about experiencing life just every day and everything that you can get out of it.
And that was your like initial, so kind of getting into the outdoor community. Did you do anything kind of before that or when you were younger, anything like that? Or was
I
that
did
the
a
big?
That was really the big one. I did a road trip with my dog for 3 weeks. We hiked in 13 different states from Maine all the way down the East Coast and over to Austin, Texas. And then we went to Hot Springs, Arkansas. We mined for crystal quartz out there. And then I drove back with just my dog. And that was, I think, really the initial kind of stepping stone. I sort of had like butterflies in my stomach because of fear and traveling alone as a young woman. I think I was 27 at the time. And just my little dog, he passed 4 days after we got back. Um, so that's when it kind of happened. I mean, I went
Gotcha.
a couple months of being like, okay, depressed, but I really just snapped out of it and just started living my life.
So before that, what were you doing and what was your upbringing before that?
I liked spending time outside, but as a kid, I just was inside a lot. I wasn't really exposed to a lot of any of the stuff that I do now. Um, I really watched TV a lot and, didn't like school. I thought there was always kind of more to life than what the society is conditioning us to believe life is good if you get married, buy a house, and have kids. Like, it just wasn't for me. And I just pulled myself out of that conditioning.
What part of the US did you grow up in?
In
Or
Maine.
Maine? Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you just kind of decided one day to just start traveling with your dog, or what kind of led up to
Yeah.
that?
A lot of it is I don't really do that well in the winters up here. It's very dark and cold, and the snowstorms, we can get up to 3 feet in one blizzard. So like everything shuts down. And for me, I'm an extrovert. I call myself an extra extrovert. And I just like I need the social like life to keep me alive. It's just in my nature. And I now come here only seasonally. I visit my family and I operate a business doing massage therapy and now yoga. But I leave and I leave it here. I just recently moved this business. I closed it down last year just so that I didn't have to pay for it. But
So when you're on the road, how do you go about finding like clients and just kind of doing your whole nomad thing? What's like,
well, it's really easy when you're a skydiver because honestly, like a lot of drop zones are private property. So I would just bring my table and I would set up for the skydivers and staff. And sometimes the drop zone would pay me to like give massages to their staff. And then that pays for my jumps, it pays for my food, and sometimes I will rent a trailer or like it's like a camper, or I'll bring my tent. Most places, most drop zones you can camp at for free if you're a licensed skydiver.
so you start doing the whole nomad thing after you got back from your trip with your dog and your dog died. And how long after that did you finally hit the road and just start going with that?
Well, I sold all of my possessions in December 2019, which was not that long ago. I went to Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Indonesia, all within 3 months. And I just had a backpack, and that was all I needed. And of course, my yoga mat. um, but that was when I decided I was like, okay, I'm done. I've had it. Unfortunately, things with coronavirus had hit pretty hard. And in Vietnam, the government wasn't, they were just like living in a lot of fear. So I really didn't want to see Vietnam in that manner. So I think I'm going to save it for another time. And I actually had come home because of that, like the borders closing. I wasn't really sure how long that was going to go on for.
Gotcha. So getting into the whole skydiving thing, back to that, what was your initial pull into that? What kind of drew you to your first jump, I guess would be the.
So I had always wanted to do it. Um, and every time I thought about it, I was like, I am gonna love it. I should just do it, you know? So I initially just did it. I ended up doing a tandem in like, I think it was August 2018. And it was for one of their yearly celebrations for the drop zone opening. And they call them boogies. And a boogie is when skydivers get together and they have a party. So I brought my tent. I had a client who was a skydiver and told me about it. Um, and I actually bought her canopy off of her, and I'm flying her parachute now, which is ironic.
Awesome.
Um, but I had met a guy. He was a packer. He packed parachutes for a living, and he just traveled the world packing parachutes for like $8 a pack job. And I fell in love with him, and he told me, "Well, I'm going to New Zealand in 6 weeks." And I said, "Well, I guess I'm going with you." And we bought a converted camper van and did freedom camping in the entire country of New Zealand for 6 months. So we saved up our money for that one and didn't really skydive that much, but that's really what initiated the more international traveling, I think.
Gotcha. So I guess the person who got you into it would be the client that convinced you to go to the drop zone initially.
I would have to say so, yeah.
Gotcha. And moving on from that, what's kind of been the big staying factor for you? What's been your favorite thing about the community of skydivers and all that you've discovered?
Um, I think there's a factor of sort of like a meditation and a slowing feeling of the mind when you're jumping. Um, and I think that's something that not a lot of other people can relate to. Um, I also can view it as sort of an escapism. I definitely think last year I used it sort of as an escapism, um, where I was kind of like pushing down a lot of like trauma and not really facing a lot of the things that I had dealt with earlier on in my life, that were pretty traumatic. Um, and I did about 165 jumps just last year in 2019. And I finally kind of halted myself and started focusing on my spiritual healing. And this year in 2020, I've only done three, which is crazy.
Is Corona really put a halt on some of the drop zone where they all kind of closed for a while there, I'm guessing?
Yeah, they were. I visited 13 drop zones last year, but the one up here in Maine, it's only open Friday through Monday. So my free time is typically during the week, like early mornings to afternoons. So I like to travel on the weekends. I just went up north to Moosehead Lake and we hiked the first 100 miles of wilderness in the Appalachian Trail.
That's a lot of
Um,
miles.
so, I mean, we just started it. We didn't do the whole thing. We
Oh,
just did like a day hike. But we met a lot of other backpackers along the way, which was really cool.
yeah, the you brought up the fact that a lot of the drop zones have campgrounds. Do many of the jumpers just stay at that campground, or is it just
Yeah, a lot of them actually have campers and it's more like a campground lifestyle. Um, they probably have more campers than anything. Um, in the bigger drop zones, the more popular ones, you can rent them only if you're a licensed skydiver. Um, but typically, if you are someone who is looking to get into that sort of environment and really want to become licensed and you're trying to save money, we've seen it all. People sleep in their cars, people sleep in tents. It's not uncommon. And typically in the community, people are very accepting of what you're doing because you're passionate about it, you know? So it's, it's really an eye-opening experience, I think, for in many different angles, you know. And I talk to people in what I like to call the real world, and they kind of think like, oh, you converted a car and you lived out of it, like, why? You know, they just don't understand. But when you go to a drop zone, they're like, oh, hey, like you can just park over here. Do you need water? And like they're just like super helpful and not judgmental.
I feel like that's the same way throughout like the whole outdoor community because climbers and skiers, you got a bunch of the same people who will live out of the back of their van or back of their car and go out for the season, especially down, at least for me, down at Red River Gorge, you'd get the seasonal people who would work at like Miguel's and the places down there that were climber campgrounds and things like that. And then they would just live out of their tent for like 3-4 months during the main climbing season. So I just know that a lot of the outdoor community has a lot of the same similarities with the drive to just live out the back of like a car to make it work.
I have heard of that. I'm actually looking into more of the Colorado environment because they kind of have it all. So
We do
it's
out
been
here.
calling me. Yeah, it's been
The mountains
calling
are
me for
amazing.
a while.
Yeah, I just made
I
the move, so it's definitely worth it.
yeah. And where did you come from?
Cincinnati, so moved all the way across about I think that's like 2,000 miles, so it was like a
Yeah, wow.
20-hour drive, something like that. So,
Awesome.
but it's been great ever since I've been out here. If you're a mountain person, it's definitely worth it.
I am a huge mountain person. The mountains in New Zealand were incredible. We did
I
the
need to get there.
Tongariro crossing, which is the volcanoes out there.
So,
Amazing.
so with the traveling, I guess we'll hop into that now. What was your first big like overseas trip to get into that side of? Because I know a lot of people who are into the outdoor community are into the traveling too. So it's another aspect of everything.
Yeah, so I would probably have to say that when I start traveling, I don't stop. I think in Bali, I stayed a maximum of 4 days in one place. Bali was a pretty cool experience, but New Zealand was probably one of my favorites for sure. They say that it's actually the same size as the state of Colorado, which is really funny. But the amount of things that there is to do there is insane.
And
Like,
that's Bali, you said, right?
that was New
New
Zealand.
Zealand, New Zealand. Gotcha.
Yeah. But I've done it all. I mean, we lived out of a converted minivan, a 1992 Toyota Estima, where the engine was actually like under the seat. And like,
Interesting.
if you have to like check the oil, you have to like lift the seat up. And it was just a lot of the cars there are imported, but they're also like really reliable because they're spending all this money to import these cars. So they're all like Toyotas and they all run forever, and it's really incredible. They have apps on your phone to find freedom camping. So as long as you have a certified vehicle, a certified self-contained vehicle, then you're allowed to camp at these places for free.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then you just sell it when you're done. So it's like like you're winning like all around. You're like, well, if you have the money to buy it, you can just sell it at the end. So you're not really losing a whole lot of money that way either. You're just spending money on gas and whatever you need repaired.
And then, so when you're traveling like that, I guess if anybody was thinking about doing it themselves, how heavy did you carry? Like how much personal items did you have?
Not much. Um, my last backpacking trip, I think my bag weighed about 25 pounds. Pretty much just involved a pair of hiking shoes, like 5 pairs of socks, probably like 10 yoga pants, but a bathing suit and, soap, a toothbrush, and a Kindle, and that's pretty much it. I roll up a towel and my yoga mat and I clip them on the outside. But of course that involves like hostels, so I wouldn't have to do like backcountry backpacking. I've never done that, but I'm very, very interested in doing that.
Gotcha. So just like backpacking around like a country, not like the wilderness.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Gotcha.
it's really cheap. Um, in like Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Indonesia, I think the most I spent on a hostel was $10 a night.
And that was the
Most
most.
Yeah, that was the most I spent. So most of them were probably between $6 and $8
It's
a
awesome.
night. Yeah, and the massages. Massages are like between 8 and 12 US dollars over there. So you get them all the time in Asia. It's
That's awesome.
amazing. Yeah.
So what's been your favorite trip so far? Favorite backpacking excursion, adventure, whatever you want to call it?
I would probably have to say my last one. That was Thailand, Cambodia, Indonesia, and Vietnam. Because I feel like I was on more of a spiritual journey this time. I had quit drinking alcohol and I had quit like partying as much. So I definitely felt like My purpose was for myself rather than just to do it to do it. Um, I visited a lot of Buddhist temples in Thailand. I learned a lot about the monk culture. I learned a lot about their culture, their food. I'm also vegan, so it's very easy to eat a vegan lifestyle out in Asia and Indonesia. Um, did like a yoga and meditation retreat in Cambodia for 2 weeks, and it was like $400. And it's like all inclusive, 3 meals a day. They even have a day of silence if you would like to do that. So it's like things are very affordable if you're backpacking over there. Um, but I didn't really get a lot of experience in Vietnam just because like I was only there for like 12 days. But I will tell you, it is one of the most beautiful countries to see in the world. The beaches are amazing.
That's awesome. Is it just white sandy, like big long beaches, or what's
It's
so spectacular about them exactly in your mind?
I think because they have a little bit of everything. So I do think I like a combination of like beaches and mountains. I'm very much about that. So from the south of Vietnam, it's like all hot and like beaches. But the more north you go, you're going to get more mountains. You're going to get a little bit colder weather. You're going to get, um, just a different style of people. Like a lot of the tourists are down south because they're just there for the hot beaches and stuff like that. Unfortunately, I didn't make my way north, but I did have a yoga retreat job set up out there, but I didn't make it. I was like, I should probably head back to the States before
Possibly before
this,
everything shuts
before
down.
I'm stuck out here for like a year.
So, so when you finally decided to start the whole nomad thing and start going everywhere, did your parents react at all, or like family members? Were they like, "Oh yeah," or was it more of a, "Oh, we kind of expected this to happen"?
Um, for my first international endeavor to New Zealand, I got "you can't" a lot from my mom. And, I was 27 years old and realized, I can do this, and it's really just taking other people's fears out. And I think that's really important is like not to allow other people's fears to absorb into your life. Um, it's okay if they worry a little bit. I did message her on WhatsApp every time we went to a new place, just because, you never know. But my dad halfway expected it. He is very much like me, and every single weekend he goes up north. He goes four-wheeling, and if it's not four-wheeling and automobiling. Um, so I do think I get a lot of that stuff from my dad's side. He's more the adrenaline one, but he won't jump out of a plane. He won't do it. He's done the plane ride where you can sit next to the pilot seat. It's like $30 to ride pilot seat, but he won't jump out. I'm still working on that one.
So your initial like jump overseas to do that in New Zealand was after you'd started skydiving, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
do you think that the whole getting into the skydiving, which I feel like it's with any outdoor sports, there's a fear aspect that you kind of have to get over with your mind like a hurdle. You think that doing the skydiving first kind of led to you being able to do that New Zealand trip, or do you think that without skydiving you would have still done a big trip like that?
Wow, that's a really, really good perspective. You're right. Now that I think about it, probably getting rid of that fear, um, especially with skydiving. People think it's really dangerous, but yeah, it's like, well, if I can do that, then I can live out of a van in another country. Um, yeah, so yeah, displacing that fear, it really can control the mind quite a lot if you let it. And I think that it's really important for us to maintain a more level minded um, lifestyle that you will feel fulfilling if you die. I mean, you're guaranteed you're going to die, right? So it might as well be a good one. That's the way I look at it. I'm like, I don't want to die and regret anything. I'm going to do it all. I mean, I was going to go do base camp in the Himalayas. I was, 3 months away from going up to northern Vietnam to Laos and then going to Tibet and checking out the Himalayas. Gonna have to save it, I guess,
Yeah, the
but it just
Himalayas
wasn't
are
my time.
Himalayas are on the list. They're just, I mean, I just want to see how massive they are because I know the difference between the eastern mountains in the Appalachians to the Rockies, and then I can only imagine the difference from the Rockies to like the Himalayas. So
Yeah,
just a huge, huge jump. But yeah, no, I love how in the outdoor community there seems to be, that's why I brought that up, is there's in most outdoor sports and activities, there's that aspect of like a little bit of fear, like you're going out into the wilderness and, Mother Nature's relentless. So, if it's you versus the world's going to win all the time.
yeah,
So
exactly.
it's kind of, it changes people's mindsets. And I feel like a lot of people who get into the outdoor community kind of have a little bit of that like in the back of their head before they even get into it. But it's actually getting into it that kind of opens up kind of the freedom to do a bunch of other things, because at least the people that I know, once they get into one thing, they get into another and they get into another, and it just leads to more and more diving into it. So
Yeah, scuba diving is next on my list.
was that close to being done before the whole COVID thing hit?
Well, it's so much cheaper to do it in Thailand. It's like half the cost, and you get like the most corals, the most reefs, the most diverse amount of sea creatures. I mean, I saw sharks just snorkeling. It's like crazy out
if you
there.
if you get certified over there, is it accepted in other countries though, or
Yeah.
it
Yeah, I
is?
think that you have to speak with like certain dive shops out there, but Kohtao is an island in Thailand, and it's only about 7 kilometers, I think, wide. And there's 63 scuba diving shops on that one island. So that's definitely the place to go if you want to learn how to scuba dive. But I'm now getting into and finding interest in many other things as well, for sure.
Like you said, backpacking, things like that. So, I mean, it's an easy jump. I feel like going from backpacking around the country to going into nature, because you just go away from people instead of staying in a hostel. It's really not too much of a difference.
Yeah.
The only thing is just learning how to land nav and things like that so you don't get lost.
Oh, I know. Yeah. I mean, that's another good thing about where you go is you can just pop in a different SIM card in different countries. So it's not that hard to do anymore, where you have your phone unlocked most of the time now when you purchase them. So that's definitely a convenience I would recommend in the future.
Just popping SIM cards out from place to place.
Yeah, I have three from three different countries just this year. So yeah, all my WhatsApp phone numbers are really confusing.
So I guess if you were gonna suggest someone, I guess we can start with skydiving. So someone looking to get into skydiving, what would be your first steps to just getting into it from your own personal experience and
It's
talking to
always
others?
it's always the money, right? It's always the money. Always.
Yeah.
I think that's really what puts it in the back seat for most people. It's like, oh, well, I can't come up with $2,800 to become certified. Um, you know, it's a lot of work, and that's only paying for your first 25 jumps. And that's in America. That's American price where I am, what we charge at this drop zone. Um, and you've got killer AFF instructors here. Accelerated Free Fall is the program that you would be going in, but you're doing gear rental that's paying for your fuel, that's paying for your pilot, that's paying for, the 2 instructors that you need. So if you think about it, like, that's a lot of things going into one sport.
Yeah.
um, but now that I am licensed, I pay $26 per jump. I own my own gear, and you're pretty much just paying for fuel at that point. So it gets much cheaper. It's just the initial
Yeah.
startup,
What's
really.
what's the initial cost of like a starter kit once you do get licensed and everything, like your first pack and all that? How much did you pay?
So my rig probably cost me about $3,800, and it was used. But typically, if you buy from like a local drop zone or like your home drop zone, somebody will try to help you out. There is a huge online community for it as well. Um, you most likely never ever start off with brand new gear. It's just you're gonna be going through a process of learning. So the sizing of your canopy will get smaller as you increase your jumps. So I've already been from a size 220 parachute down to a 150 square foot canopy in
And
200 jumps.
why does that change exactly?
So it changes because student canopies are made to ensure your safety. So they're built like we call boats, square and not elliptical at all. So um, you're really just kind of like a feather. So it actually, to me, can be a little bit more challenging when you're trying to maneuver, just because you need to pull more down on the toggles to get more of like a turn out of anything. But that's the whole idea behind being a student. You're obviously not going to play around that much as a student, because it's scary. It's like, whoa, like that was a really fast spin I just did. But once you get down to like a 190 square foot canopy and below, they start to become more responsive. So it depends on what you are looking to do in your skydive. You have belly jumpers, which fall belly to earth. They're big on formation skydiving. There's tracking and angle jumps, which is movements. So you can move horizontally across the sky, and you can get up to like 180 miles per hour, which is what I like doing. I love doing angles. So learning different body positions, you can do head up or head down, which is really difficult. They call that free fly. And all the cool kids are free flyers, all the old school belly jumpers are the formation jumpers, but they're usually the ones keeping everybody in check. So I am mostly just a belly jumper, and I've only played around with a lot of the free flying. It's very difficult. I have 3 hours of wind tunnel indoor skydiving time, and I still have a hard time getting my sit fly or a stand. It's a lot of work, and then a tunnel is even more money. So if you want to get like good at the sport, it's like wow, oh my God, like I still have to pay, all this money for the tunnel now, but I'm really in it for just like the fun of it. So I've kind of remained more of a belly and angle jumper for the most part. You don't need as much gear, but in 8 jumps, I get to put on a wingsuit.
That's awesome. An
Yeah, so I'm
exciting
pretty
thing to be.
excited about that.
How many jumps do you need for that total?
So there's different licenses. Right now I have a B license. You need 50 jumps for a B license, and you do a test and they do requirements in your logbook. So a certain amount of jumps with 7 to 8 people, or a certain amount of jumps with trying to get close to a target of landing. So stuff like that. You definitely, so 200 jumps is where I'm at right now. I'm like a couple jumps away from 200. Um, and yeah, you can put on a wingsuit. They call that a C license. You can wingsuit after that. And, I can become a coach and teach students too. I can take a coach course. It's like a couple-day program, and you can actually have students pay you or pay for your slot, which is getting up there. So you'll pretty much jump for free if you become a coach. Um, if you have your own gear, really, which is what I'm trying to get into because I love teaching. I'm so passionate about teaching. And I think
Yeah.
my goal is to start wingsuiting, um, and maybe try a couple of base jumps at Twin Falls in Idaho, do it the right way. Um, Highly recommend that you have a couple hundred jumps before you ever get into base jumping because it is very dangerous.
Just a
Um,
little bit.
yeah, but eventually I would really like to become an AFF instructor, I think.
I know there's also, do you ever plan on getting down to Bridge Day down in West Virginia?
Yeah, yeah, I do. I think it was canceled this year, but but
Yeah,
yeah,
it
it's
happens
on my
during the
list.
summer. That normally happens
Yeah,
during the summer, but I'm pretty sure that was canceled this year.
yeah,
Because
I think it was too.
I've thought about going there and climbing while it's going on. So, but
Oh,
haven't
cool.
been able to do that yet. So, but
Well, if you do, say hi to all my friends. The skydiving community is very small, so
you probably know a
I
lot of
think.
people that end up there.
Oh yeah, you wouldn't believe it. And it's funny because the more I travel, it's funny you run into more skydivers. You're like, "Hey, what? How are you here?" Like my ex-boyfriend who I traveled with in New Zealand, he started a job up in Georgia here in the States. And he ended up working for two of the people that he jumped with in Taupo, New Zealand. And he's like, "What? This is crazy." And it's just like such a small world, really.
Yeah, my dad is a pilot. Before he got his job where he's at now, he was flying skydivers in Ohio for a while. So,
Oh, which part?
um, I'm trying to remember the name of it right now. It's just north of Cincinnati, up near like the Mason area. So I forget the name of the drop zone that he
Nice.
flew
I've
at.
jumped
But
in Ohio.
what part?
Cle- Cleveland Skydiving Center. My
Okay,
friend
yeah, it would not have
Marcy,
been that one.
yeah, my friend Marcy owns it. And there's like a huge Amish culture out there too.
Oh
So it's
yeah.
like really cool. They'll like come out and watch you jump on Sundays and stuff. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of weird up there because I had friends that went to Kent, so I'd go up to Kent State, and you're driving right through Amish country, which I think
Yeah.
I think it's either the largest or the second largest Amish community in the U.S. So,
It's the most I've ever seen. I know that much.
oh yeah, but yeah, no, the whole it just sounds. I didn't really know much about the skydiving community, but it just sounds so much like the rest of the outdoor community where everyone's welcoming and especially climbing as big as it's still pretty small of a community that actually goes outdoor climbing. So you go down to the red and you'll run into people that you've ran into before climbing other places, or if you got to the New River Gorge, the people that are climbing outside, still a pretty small community, probably bigger than skydiving, but it's still not that big. But you
Yeah,
still get the same. You're at like a campsite and you'll just be talking and run into people that you've met before camping somewhere else. So it's very much
that's
the same type of community, same type of like situation, I guess.
that's definitely on my list too, is climbing. I've noticed I'm kind of leaning towards that too. I really want to go out west for that though, it's not really big out here.
It depends on where you're at. I mean, Red River Gorge is a mecca. I mean, I met people from Spain, from Canada, from all over the world climbing down there, and it's literally the mecca of the east. So if you got, the west has more big climbing areas like super high multi-pitch walls, but the red is known for its single pitch. So it's just a beautiful area to climb into. So you run into people from all over there. The coolest guy I met was some guy from Spain that did the same thing as you did with traveling around. He sold all of his stuff in Spain and went on a 3-month climbing trip in the US and just went around to all the different places for climbing. And he was near the end of it, and we just drank and talked and had a good night.
That's awesome. They
So
sound he sounds pretty cool.
I mean, that's a dime a dozen in the climbing community. There's so many people that just are kicking it. A lot of the climbing community lives out of vans that do that kind of stuff. So I know van life's huge in the climbing community, which it sounds
Yeah.
like it's kind of a thing in the skydiving community too. With
Oh, absolutely. I'm actually looking for one right now. If I'm going to be here, I might as well have a van because it's definitely limited my ability to travel as much. So I'm just picky. I really want a ProMaster 2500 high top.
very specific.
Yes,
So
I am reliable and spacey.
so before you were just living out of your car, that was it,
I
or
had
was it a van?
a Nissan Pathfinder that I took the
Pathfinder.
second row seats out of. And then I built a platform and a bed. And then when you opened the back latch, I built a kitchen that had a hand pump sink with just like a freshwater tank and a gray water tank. And it was only like a foot and a half wide. Um, but yeah, I could cook, but it just kind of sucked in the rain. But I mean, you figure it out. Some drop zones have a place that you can go to cook. So, I mean, that's pretty cool. Like, no one's going to tell you, like, you can't come over and, like, cook, like, it's just, if you need something, someone's going to help you out, like, chances.
So having lived out of a vehicle, I guess, what are some of the necessities you would say to put into a vehicle that you're modifying to live out of?
Bed. A
First off.
bed's probably the most important part, I think. But my necessities are, a decent kitchen because I'm vegan. It can be difficult for me traveling, especially here in the United States. Um, so I think a kitchen with like a proper amount of water storage would be really helpful so that I can live off the grid. Solar panels and a controller so that I can control the temperature inside as well and insulate it correctly as
what
well.
what would be the proper amount of water that you'd want to be able to store?
I'd probably want at least 25 liters. I've been traveling so much. I'm not on the United States metric
Yeah.
system anymore. So how much is 25
I
liters?
think there's like 3.75 liters or something in a gallon. Uh, I'll look it up real fast.
So it's probably like 7 or 8 gallons, I think. But I think that's plenty. It lasted us about a week in New
Yeah,
Zealand with 25 liters.
that was right. Not 3.75, but 3.785. So that was close. But yeah,
Oh,
so
nice.
So about 8, yeah, about 8 gallons, something like
Yeah.
that.
So that'll typically last you about, a week doing dishes. You don't probably really, I mean, you probably could drink it, but
That's not your
um,
drinking water. That's
right.
just your.
Yeah. You don't want to, but you can always boil it. If you had to. But I would have to say, like, the kitchen's probably the most important part. A shower would be really nice too. Maybe like an outdoor shower, I think would be cool with like a little tiny hot water heater. So, something that lasts you like 5 minutes or something would be plenty, I think. That was kind of a struggle. I remember in New Zealand, just having to go to like the local gym and pay for, your shower. And it was like $5 every time, you know. But I mean, it's possible to do. I just think during this time where everything is more difficult and many things are kind of like um, not really promised to be open, I think that a shower would be necessary.
Feel like everything's starting to open up a little bit more again. I mean, you can at least probably find a shower.
Yeah, that makes me really happy. Planet Fitness memberships are really good for that too. So I have one of those. I've always had one of those just in case. Um,
Also, probably nice if you just want to get a workout in. They're all over the place. So if you ever had a gym,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a yoga instructor as well, so I do a lot of that every single morning. But yeah, I think it would be pretty convenient. Most drop zones have showers that you can use as well. Um, if you're a licensed skydiver or if you live there, most people live at the drop zone seasonally because they're finding jobs every 6 months at a different drop zone. That's typically what happens, is a skydiver will apply for a place and then just dedicate the one season there, which is generally 6 months.
gotcha.
Um, so they'll just move from drop zone to drop zone usually.
So you got into it up in Maine. Did you get into it at your local drop zone up there? Or where did you do all your like initial jumps to get certified at? Was it your
Yeah,
close one?
I did mine up here just because it took me almost a whole season to do it. Probably almost 3 months to actually finish it out because I was working so much to pay for it as well. I only could jump on Sundays. And the weather in the East Coast can be kind of iffy.
A
So
little bit.
you have to remember, like, you have to take into consideration like winds.
Yeah,
Students are not allowed to jump under 15-mile-per-hour winds in this state. Every drop zone is different, but typically it'll be around that number, either anywhere from 14 to 16 miles per hour.
that's not even that fast of
No,
wind. Yeah,
not really. But I think it's just because of the size of the parachute that
yeah.
they're using. They can really float away if you're jumping in anything higher than that.
Any stories of that? People just missing the drop zone by a lot because of.
Yeah, of course. There's this thing called off landing. Now, our drop zone in Maine is a very challenging one to learn at because we grow a lot of trees here. We also grow a lot of rocks. So, yeah, our drop zone's really small and it's surrounded by just tall pine trees. So, I think the landing area here is only a half a mile long and it's north and south landing pattern only. So if the winds are coming from the east or the west, we typically won't be jumping, because the runway runs south and north and you don't ever want to cross the runway for obvious reasons. um, but I went down to Skydive City in Florida for a while, and that's a pretty well known worldwide drop zone. I kind of grew out of it, um, but they have a lot more space, a lot of cow fields and stuff. So you'll see like our friends on their GoPros showing their videos, like almost landing on cows and stuff. It's like, oh my goodness. And like, just like swamps, people accidentally land in swamps. But to be honest, like off landings don't happen a lot. And if you're familiar with the sport, you'll know that it's mostly wingsuiters that land off because they're probably just fooling around up there.
Fair enough.
And yeah, they lose track of where they're going. So they,
One second you're here, next second you're there, and then you're like, well,
well, and if the winds change too, you're in a wingsuit and it affects you a little bit more, I think. I wouldn't know from experience, but I know from talking with other people that wingsuiters are typical for the most off landings. Um, and then typically someone's going to be watching you and someone will come get you. So it's not like that scary, really. As long as you find a nice flat place to land, you should be okay.
gotcha. Well, I don't think I have any more questions I can think of. Is there anything else that you'd want to add in
Um,
about your
I think
journey to where you're at and just,
I think more of making sure that people are following their path is really important. I think it's important to add not comparing your life to another person, um, and just going with what you feel is passionate in your heart and what you feel is right and fulfilling to you is a really important message to expose to people who possibly want to experience but don't have the courage to experience the things that we're doing, to really just step out of your comfort zone. And I think you'll notice a huge shift and transformation in yourself, and then you'll become pretty inspiring to other people around you. And I definitely think that's probably one of the most important things, is to take care of number one, and that is you. So
yeah, take care of
yeah,
yourself before you can take care of others.
I 100% agree with that statement.
Well,
Yeah,
it
so
was
no, I think that's about it.
awesome. Well, very happy to have you on. That's an awesome story. I was very excited to have you on and hear everything. So glad that you were able to take the time to answer all the questions about how you got into your sport and how you got into the outdoor community. And I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
I feel honored, really, to be part of your podcast. So thank you so
Yeah, no
much.
problem. Thank
Take
you very
care.
much. You too.